The Viking hordes were famous in medieval times for their vicious hit-and-run attacks across Europe. But in this film, we'll look at what happened when they commenced a full invasion of Britain and how they conquered and settled. This is the Viking Invasion. The Vikings, or Norsemen, were originally from Denmark and parts of Scandinavia, and were well-renowned shipbuilders. This explains how they were able to perform hit-and-run attacks all over Europe. But as land became scarce in their homelands, some Viking princes and warlords started to push out to find bigger land or new land for themselves. And this is how the Viking invasion began.
The raid on Lindisfarne in 793. There have been raids before, but they possibly went unrecorded. Before that, it's not as if the Scandinavians didn't know where England was. We do have connections between Scandinavia and England. You just have to think about the Sutton ship burial. These were not Vikings, but we definitely have cultural context. They knew what they were coming for. They also knew, stuff that Lindisfarne was a monastery of status, so that there was something to gather. And so the raid on Lindisfarne is taken as the beginning of the Viking Age.
The first major attack by Viking raiders was on Holy Island in the north of England. They ransacked the priory, killed the monks and made off with a lot of church treasure. This attack is widely acknowledged as the first Viking attack on England and was the start of their invasion.
In the 9th century, we have a period of Scandinavians leaving their homelands. That is not just going to England or to Ireland. We've also got them moving across the Atlantic to the Faroe Isles and to Iceland. But some of them come here, and we hear that there is a great army under the leadership of a number of named Scandinavian rulers.
Back in the days of the Viking, there was no England, but a collection of 4 kingdoms: Northumbria, Mercia, East Anglia, and Wessex, as well as Scotland to the north and Wales to the west.
There's a massive army. It's called Michelhere by the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. It's called, sort of an army, but thinking that according to some people an army can be 30 people, it mightn't have been that big. This is one of the biggest discussions in Viking studies at the moment, whether we have a lot of people coming over or just a very effective war machine.
My name is Bork Ragnarsson. I am not a weapons expert, but a blacksmith. Dane-axe was so powerful, probably one of the best weapons you could use. It was known to even be able to, chop straight through a horse. So they were very powerful. Known to be the largest of axe you could come across, and it was usually the same size as the person who was using it. The best known story of one of these Dane-axe being used was the Battle of Stamford Bridge. Basically the Vikings had lost that battle and so had to retreat very quickly. The story goes from the Bayeux Tapestry that they left one man on this narrow bridge and he stopped this entire army getting across just by swinging his axe round and round. I have the sword here, which was just used for killing people. It wasn't used for anything else. The axe, for example, was used for chopping wood at home and, obviously using it in battle. The sword was just used for a battle and that was it. You can't really do anything with it at home apart from show off with it and show people how rich you were. But those shields are mostly made of wood. The middle part you can see sticking out slightly, which is the boss. Your hand would go in there. The reason the boss is made of metal is, so of course, when an axe is hitting your shield constantly, it's going to go through the wood. That's what an axe is made for. It protects your hand from getting chopped off. You'll notice on the rim of the shield, it's actually what we call rawhide, which is what your dog chews are made of these days. It's to strengthen your shield. So for example, if somebody was to hit the shield on the top with an axe, that's going to split your shield in two straight away. But if you put rawhide around it, that makes it stronger. A shield wall is literally when everybody stands side by side and you put your shields in front of you, probably a little bit like you can see at the bottom of the table there, hopefully, and that creates a wall of shields that the enemy can't get through. And you would simply just start walking forward very slowly, hitting your weapon against your shield and shouting, making as much noise as you possibly can to try and disturb the enemy. One weapon that a Viking would use would be the axe. And there are many different types of axe. This one is a bearded axe, which they would often use basically to hook over the top of people's shields, pull their shields out the way, and then their friend next to them would stab the enemy.
Eventually, the Vikings made a full invasion on British soil, and within a few years, the northern province of Northumbria had fallen under complete Viking control.
That then runs over the north of England, they definitely run over East Anglia, they do run over the Midlands. Sometimes the kings in the Midlands are portrayed as puppet kings, as working with them. This is not borne out by archaeology, and obviously we have all our written sources from the south of England, which actually uses the opportunity to consolidate itself and to actually claim overlordship. This is Alfred the Great, and what we have is a series of battles. The army goes to all of different places, sometimes stays over winter.
As the Vikings pushed southwards, they soon conquered most of East Anglia and Mercia, but was stopped for the first time by the Saxon natives. The young King Alfred the Great of Wessex had put up strong opposition to the Viking advances, and soon a stalemate was reached.
The Vikings themselves were in charge of the north of England. It was known as the Danelaw. The Anglo-Saxons were still in charge of the south, Winchester being their capital city.
Alfred retreated into the nearby marshlands of his home, and some years later returned and won a historical victory over the Vikings, restoring his place as King of Wessex and the opposition to the Vikings.
Of course, we have a decisive victory by King Alfred. At the end of the 9th century, we have St. Guthrum, who is defeated, the leader of the great army, accepting baptism. And from that moment onwards, he takes an English name. He starts imitating Alfred's coinage. He starts actually living quite English, which is really interesting. As a result of this, we have England wasn't there as a country, but we have a divided territory. The north and the Midlands, so right down Watling Street to London, goes to the Scandinavians. The southern part goes to Alfred and his people of Wessex. Have Athelred been so desperate that he lashes out in a decree that says, we should, all Scandinavians who have grown up like weeds in our cornfields should be killed. And this is the St. Brice's Day massacre in 1002 on the 30th of November. And so what we are getting is the first genocide against Scandinavians. And we can see it. We've now got skeletal evidence that this was followed through.
Eventually, the Vikings started to lose ground in the north, and the last Viking king died in York.
Supremacy again between the sons of Athelred, the sons of Cnut, and the sons, of the first marriage. We have two ex-queens fighting, all trying to push their sons. In the end, it is Edward the Confessor, the son by Emma with Athelred, who takes on the throne. Edward is childless. Harold Godwinnerson, the son of Godwinner, who became, a very powerful earl under Cnut, takes on, takes on the claim. He has some tenuous, claim via the female line, to kingship, takes on the line and proclaims himself king. But of course, we also have Emma's great nephew, who also thinks he's got a claim to the throne via, his great aunt. And that's when we got the Norman conquest and the Norman invasion.